You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Pulling up the slate.
Justin, you're like a pimple on the ass of progress here. What's the deal, bud?
I'm ready. Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Bob Harris, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak. Gentlemen, it is wild card weekend. The regular season has concluded. We got a 4-game slate on DraftKings this weekend. I have blessed with your company this evening, I should say. Bob, you weren't with us last week, with us in spirit. And a couple weeks ago, I wasn't with you two, so it's good to have the three of us together. What is going on in Albuquerque?
A little bit of snow, just a nice leisurely pace now that it is the postseason. And just because I don't want the listeners to miss out, I just called Justin a pimple on the ass of progress prior to going on the air.
Good stuff.
So,
beautiful stuff.
Yes, but now that we're all moving forward, Kyle, I know, is ready to launch into to this great slate that we have ahead. It's a wild card weekend slate. There will be 4 games, 8 teams, so limited slate, and some pretty exciting storylines to the games here. The Buffalo-Houston will be Saturday afternoon, late afternoon kickoff. Tennessee at New England, prime time, Saturday night. I think this is one that's not going to work out the way Justin Lonero would like. Then Sunday, we have Minnesota in the early afternoon window, Seattle and Philadelphia in the late afternoon window. So a lot of interesting matchups here that we'll dig into. Just before we do, a couple newsy items. Ron Rivera officially named the head coach of the Washington Redskins. Interestingly enough, they were the guys that got him fired. The loss to the Redskins was what led to his final paycheck there. No, he's still getting paid. But led to his departure from the Carolina Panthers. There are other jobs, of course, open still. We'll be seeing, it sounds like as we record this on Thursday evening, that the Cowboys are ready to move on. Ed Werder is reporting. They've been kind of moving slow on this, slow rolling it. But Jason Garrett, we know, is not going to be there too much longer. There have been some speculation that because it was taking so long, perhaps he'd be moved to a front office job or something. And it sounds like now he'll be out the window. And look, it'll be a pretty popular destination. The Cleveland Browns, less so, although they appear to be taking a page from the San Francisco 49ers. They're going to hire their coach, then their GM, and make sure that everyone's on the same page, which, look, the NFL is a copycat league. We see the success that it's led to in San Francisco. And not coincidentally, I suspect the Cleveland Browns traveled to San Francisco this weekend to talk to defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. And maybe talk to some other people there and figure things out. Beyond that, the interviews will be ongoing throughout the next couple of weeks. There will be plenty of speculation. The Giants are looking after firing Pat Shurmur as well. So we'll see how this plays out. Dallas may get its pick of the litter at some point once they jump into the fray, and we'll see. But definitely some things of interest. Josh McDaniels, obviously a target, and has become a hot commodity again, even after bailing on the last chance he got. So interesting there.
Last minute.
And I think also just worth noting, the Jaguars will retain Doug Marrone, if you hadn't heard that, and give him and GM Dave Caldwell one more chance to figure this thing out. And perhaps the arrival of Gardner Minshew was enough to keep them on board, and the early development of him was enough to keep them on board. With all that out of the road, the injuries for this week's game, the Saturday game, Will Fuller is the guy of primary interest in the Buffalo-Houston game. He is questionable. James Palmer of NFL Network is saying that he's being told by multiple sources that Fuller is a long shot to play. That has a pretty big impact, I think, on their offense. If you look at break down the numbers, they're just not as effective without him as they have been. And certainly not the passing attack. For Buffalo, Andre Roberts, nobody's going to be too worried about. He's questionable. New England, Julian Edelman, also listed as questionable for this one, and says he feels better. Tennessee Titans, Adam Humphries out, Khalif Raymond out, and otherwise pretty much in the clear. Minnesota at New Orleans. Michael Thomas upgraded to full practice on Thursday, dealing with the hand issue. He'll be fine, and he will catch everything thrown his way, and those passes will be copious. For the Minnesota Vikings, Dalvin Cook, won't say how close he is to 100%, but he is practicing fully, as is Alexander Mattison. For Philadelphia, it's a mess. No Nelson Aguilar. It doesn't look like he'll be playing, and that's the least of their problems. Miles Sanders says he will practice on Friday, has yet to at this point, has a low ankle sprain. A little dicey there, it seems like to me. Beyond that, Zach Ertz is the big issue. Fractured rib and also lacerated kidney, according to multiple reports. If that's the case, he's not going to play. He is practicing on a limited basis. So did Jordan Howard for like a month and a half without playing and not being medically cleared. And that's the issue for Ertz right now. He is not medically cleared. So those things you'll see in the news and views section of the site. We'll be following up on those throughout the right up through each kickoff. And so keep an eye on that. And also check out, there will be plenty of columns there. There's stuff from me and Kyle there right now. So check that out. DFS all focus. So with all that out of the way, Justin, let's get you in on this parade here. And we'll start with the quarterback position. Tom Brady is the cheapest quarterback on some of these slates, I know, on DraftKings, I think. This is your Patriot team. What are they going to do? What do you think about Tom Brady in this game?
I think that the time is now. I think they all know it, and I would not bet my money against him. That being said, the weather is supposed to be really poor here Saturday evening, cold. I think that kind of levels the playing field for both teams. I think this could be a game where they want to get back to the ground. Sony Michel's cheap on DraftKings. I think James White's going to have some involvement. I will have some Tom Brady. Because of his price, I don't think he's going to hurt you in lineups. The fact of the matter is there's just not enough talent around him. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the frustration. So I think this could be, given the weather and these two teams, I think we're going to see a game similar to like what they did week 16 against the Buffalo Bills, somewhat of a boxing match with Derrick Henry and I would hope that they would try to get the ground game going, set up play action for Tom Brady. But it's scary, and I think as a fan, we've expected like wins for the last 2 decades. Like, oh, they're going to win. This is a football game where they might not win, and there's plenty of people that don't think that they're going to win. So as a fan of the game, it's going to be interesting to see how this translates. But it's Tom Brady. It's January, and you'd be a fool to completely rule him out.
Yeah, so who else do you like at quarterback, though, just on this slate in general this weekend?
Drew Brees, dollar for dollar, I think is the best play. 6,600 at home. I mean, it's kind of a shaky Minnesota Vikings secondary. Xavier Rhodes is about as overrated as they've come at corner in the last couple of years. I mean, I think, it would be foolish not to play Drew Brees. 6,600 at home. Missed a few games this season, 27 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's been the Drew Brees that we've seen the last 10 or 12 years. Going to pair him up with Michael Thomas and go elsewhere. I don't see a necessity to play Russell Wilson. You pay up. He's had a terrific year. The first time they played was actually in Philadelphia, week 12, 17-9 game. Not a lot going on there. It'd be interesting to see if the game was similar this go around. So for me, it's Brady. I'm going to pay way down. And if I'm going to pay up, it's going to be Drew Brees at 6,600.
That seems reasonable enough. Kyle, your quarterback take in this slate.
Yeah, so for me, I'm big on Deshaun Watson. I think the Houston-Buffalo game has some sneaky shootout potential because Buffalo's defense good, but Deshaun Watson great, and Houston's defense bad. Buffalo offense pretty good, especially very spiky. That's one thing that I kind of want to look for on these slates is maybe not the mean projection of on average who's going to score how many points, but like at their ceiling level of outcome, who's going to score a lot of points. And Josh Allen and the Buffalo offense kind of have that ceiling outcome. So I think both sides of the Deshaun Watson-Josh Allen duel are interesting for tournaments. And Deshaun Watson, honestly, on DraftKings 6,400, him and Drew Brees are the two best values. I would lean Deshaun Watson because of the rushing floor you get, but because of the implied team total, I totally see that Drew Brees has probably a touchdown projection that is a bit higher. In tournaments, man, Kirk Cousins, nobody's going to play Kirk Cousins just because like, their offense is fine, but they're massive underdogs. But that's really what I love. Massive underdogs in the Superdome. That's what you want to go for in tournaments. Like, we've seen it. Yeah, points. Like, they're one of the few teams that give up more points at home than away because they put up so many yards at home. In fact, the Saints average 420 on the dot yards at home. They move the ball when they're in the Superdome because most teams move the ball in the Superdome. So, like, it's the strategy that's worked when you were stacking the 49ers going into New Orleans, when you were stacking Kyle Allen and the Panthers going into New Orleans, and I believe it was week 1, Texans going into New Orleans. Teams score a lot of points in New Orleans, and nobody's going to be on it because they're never on it. Because it just seems like when you get a bland, boring quarterback like Kirk Cousins. But, I don't care. It's low ownership. It's been a great spot for quarterbacks in the past. I think that's the easiest tournament play of the slate is Kirk Cousins and then just stack Vikings, run it back with a few New Orleans Saints.
Yes, I would agree. And talked to Matthew Collar from local beat reporter there in Minnesota, local radio host anyway. And that was it. The question is for every week is which Kirk Cousins in it. I guess the good news is it's not Monday night. So we got that going for us. So let's go to the running back position. Kyle, you start us off.
So on DraftKings, 7,400 is just a bad price for Alvin Kamara. Like, we've seen it all season. He's been getting volume. Like, he is second in the NFL in targets per game, and he gets double-digit carries per game, and he's only 7,400. Like, I think he's I would honestly project him right in line with a guy like Derrick Henry because of how little, at least on DraftKings, like, Derrick Henry's receiving value is going to get him, and he plays the best defense in the league in in New England, whereas Alvin Kamara gets one of the highest totals of the slate. I believe it is the highest total, and he also gets the highest implied team total, so his touchdown projection is just great. And as we've seen the past 2 weeks where Alvin Kamara scored 4 times, as opposed to scoring, I believe, 2 times in the entire season before that, like, touchdowns are random, touches are not nearly as random. Chase the volume, touchdowns will follow. Alvin Kamara, I absolutely love. And Devin Singletary in the second half of the season is the other back that I feel very good about in cash. This Houston defense, they'll be getting J.J. Watt back, and that is absolutely one of the players who, like, I don't care too much about defense. I do care about J.J. Watt. He does make a measurable impact on, like, Houston's defensive projection. But Devin Singletary gets the work, man. And I think Week 17 was interesting because on a game that meant essentially literally nothing to Buffalo outside of some extra practice reps, they still ran Frank Gore for a half. I don't really think they care about Frank Gore. And we've seen over the second half of the season, Devin Singletary has averaged like 14 or more his average over 14 carries and I believe like 3.5 targets per game, 90 plus, he's averaged over 90 yards from scrimmage per game. If touchdown variance swings, which has kind of been the one thing lacking from his game, I think he is a great tournament play. And because of his volume and his price, $6K, I think he's probably also a cash play for me.
Spoke with Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic, covers the Bills on a daily basis. He would totally agree with that take and feels the same. Just a note on Kamara, Justin, before we jump into your running back picks. Mike Triplett from ESPN reminded me today, and I had to go back and look. He has finished every one of his seasons with the Saints with 81 catches.
Wow. I feel like you talked to him a lot over the years.
I do talk to him. Yeah, we talked to him a fair amount. He's and one of the reasons why is because he is, in addition to a great beat writer, he's a fantasy guy. I mean, he really gets what we're after.
Beats that play fantasy, those are the guys who get it.
He is one of them. And look, there's a number of them. Joe Curley from the Ventura County Star in Los Angeles, he'll sit there and break down. You ask him for a wide receiver breakdown, and he'll give you the redraft, the dynasty, the upside, the PPR. I mean, he'll break it down completely. Some of these guys are really great. Triplett's one of them. Anyhow, you're one of them too, Justin. So tell me what you think about the running backs in this week's slate.
I think if the Titans are going to go into New England and win, it's going to be on the back of Derrick Henry at 8,200. And I'm not going to be involved in the passing game. But if I am Mike Vrabel, Tennessee Titans, I'm going to take Derrick Henry and I'm going to feed him the ball 30-something times. I know the Pats have been pretty good there. But he has been an absolute animal, and I think a lot of us have slept on him all season long, 1,500 rushing yards. So I'm kind of with Derrick Henry. I think it's going to be like that kind of a boxing match in New England, given the weather. Just ride Derrick Henry if I'm going to pay up. I couldn't agree more as far as what Kyle said about Alvin Kamara, 7,400 at home. I mean, Alvin Kamara is he's never going to hurt you, but I feel like all season long,
right,
he just didn't give you exactly what you wanted, exactly what you paid in season-long leagues with that early first-round premium, but he was still good enough. And he's going to have 5-6 targets every single week. He's going to have 80, 90. He's going to be involved. He's not Christian McCaffrey. I anticipated the same amount of volume this season as McCaffrey, but he's just in a league of his own. Going to pay way down. I am looking at Sony Michel. Did not rush for 100 yards this season. I wrote him up and digging in the crates. I think that, again, this is a Patriots team that needs some type of spark. I don't think that Sony Michel can provide that full spark, but I think it would behoove them to ride him as the Titans will ride Derrick Henry. He's a volume back. It's going to open up play action. So for 4,600, based on the volume, you're going to get 20 touches out of Sony Michel this weekend. I'm there as well. Miles Sanders is an interesting play. Bob, do you think he's going to play? Does it look like he's going to play this weekend?
He says he's going to play. I question whether he's going to be full speed. I think we may see a fair amount of Jordan Howard and Boston Scott in this one. But tomorrow, Friday, we'll be check the injury report, check the news and views section of the site, see where he's at. If he actually gets on the practice field, the talk is it's a low sprain, a grade 1 sprain, pretty minor. I mean, they can put a hell of a lot of tape on something like that and let him go. But how effective can he be? Will he be the full go? We saw with Derrick Henry. I mean, not necessarily debilitated, but pretty much how much he was limited by his hamstring. I mean, it's just, running backs, you'll be surprised to learn, rely on running, and things like hamstrings and ankles are an important part of that process.
Yeah, so, kind of inevitable.
Yeah, I would be concerned about that. Even if let's say he's good to go and he's fully cleared, maybe if he comes all the way off the injury report and I start hearing really good things during pregame warm-ups, maybe I'm a little more interested. But otherwise, I think they have other options, and why wouldn't they use them?
Right, and that's typically what they've done over the last couple seasons, ran these committees in Philadelphia, but the timing is kind of piss poor because Miles Sanders, week 15 and 16, that's what I think the Eagles wanted. That's why this is our guy. This is why we drafted him. Just absolutely ripped it up late in the season. And I think they would want to continue that into the playoffs. I would agree with Kyle as far as Devin Singletary. This is going to be his backfield. I think we all knew it. It was just a matter of time. 6K. I think it's going to behoove them to use Devin Singletary against Houston. I think he's another guy that's going to kiss probably 20 touches. You're paying for volume there. One last guy would be obviously James White. James White and Julian Edelman are like your two fixtures on that Pats offense. And outside that, it's just a guessing game. It's a lot of meh. So James White, he's not having the numbers that he's had historically. And that's because Rob Gronkowski's been out of the picture. Rob Gronkowski changed everything for the New England Patriots offense, and coverages have to be different. He's not running free like he has in recent years. However, Tom Brady trusts him. Tom Brady's trust is everything. So he's a sure shot for 4 or 5 receptions this week. I also like his price at 5,700. So it's Henry. I'm not certain about Dalvin Cook in New Orleans, but he's arguably the best running back in football. I think we were all right about him this season. Kamara, James White, and Sony Michel at this point in time for me.
So you like every single running back not named Miles Sanders on the slate?
Not named, or Carlos Hyde. Maybe a little bit of Duke Johnson. Johnson.
I do think there's some reason to believe that if the Texans are wise and they want to try and eat this and nibble at this and keep Josh Allen off the field, we could see a heavy dose of Carlos Hyde. But what he does with that, I mean, he's kind of big play dependent. So I tend to agree in general. And on the Patriots, you mentioned the loss of Rob Gronkowski. I think we should keep stressing too the loss of James Devlin, the fullback. I mean, Landon Roberts is doing a great job as a linebacker and, scored a touchdown last week and all. Very exciting. But boy, Devlin made a difference to that rushing attack, and maybe that's been one of the issues for Sony Michel. Beyond that, let's pivot over to the wide receivers. There are some big names, some big prices, some really favorable matchups for some of these guys. Dive in, Justin.
Yeah, if you're going to go on the cheap at running back, it affords you.
No, a wide receiver.
Sorry, but if I'm going to have a Sony Michel or a White, and I'm not paying for the Cooks or the Kamaros or Derrick Henrys, you're going to have Michael Thomas should be in every single one of your lineups. I mean, that's just don't get cute and fade him. Cash games, tournaments. It's Michael Thomas. What we saw was history. The rapport has been really something special to watch, and it hasn't happened a ton in NFL history. So there's your answer for wide receiver. And you're not looking back. A little nervous about DeAndre Hopkins, but he is at home. Kyle's right. I mean, Deshaun Watson is the next generation. Could I see a fade for DeAndre Hopkins? Yeah, because he's going to be heavily owned as well. I'm going to go down a little bit. I do like Cole Beasley. I know it doesn't sound cute at all. Poor man's Julian Edelman. He can get you 20 DraftKings points, no problem. 5,600. I like him underneath. I like his rapport with Josh Allen's kind of limited skill set, in my opinion. I know you guys are Smokey Brown guys. I'm a little more conservative, so I'm going to take the Cole Beasley approach. I think that with Will Fuller being a long shot, I certainly think that opens up space for our buddy Kenny Stills. Very Marvin Jones-esque is Kenny Stills. He is that home run hitter. I think it keeps defenses honest. When he is healthy, but it's unfortunate that you don't see Fuller, Kenny Stills, and DeAndre Hopkins. Feels like they're never on the field at the same time. But Stills is 4,600. Again, we know what he can do. We've seen it time and time again. We saw it down in Miami. He's that kind of home run hitter. I think you could use him in tournaments, and he could separate you from the pack. One more guy I'll mention, a depleted pass-catching crew in Philadelphia this season. And Carson Wentz has had to rely on his tight ends primarily. But out of the blue, here's Greg Ward, and by default, he's going to be your wide receiver one coming into this game. I think he's fine for cash games, 5,200. 6 to 8 targets, maybe 80 yards. You're okay with that. And it's a team that I think it's a secondary in Seattle that can be exploited. So that's where I'm at. I do like Kyle's call on Kirk Cousins, and I think you're going to pair him up with Stephon Diggs. And obviously Stephon Diggs' ceiling is as high as anybody's. I don't know what happened to Adam Thielen. He is healthy, but this has turned into the Stephon Diggs show in Minnesota.
Yeah, and I guess, one of the things you look at, the Saints have given up a lot of touchdown passes, second most in the playoffs of the playoff teams, 27, only slightly less than Houston. And you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's fair to note that Tre'Davious White's given up 0 touchdowns this year, but he did give up some last year. One of them was to DeAndre Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a little bit of a push there. Kyle, and on Ward, it certainly seems like Carson Wentz is like, there was immediate chemistry there. So that's pretty much working in his favor. Kyle, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, so in cash, like Justin said, like Michael Thomas, an argument for one of the best, if not the best receiving season of all time. Like, didn't get there in touchdowns or yards, but in terms of like both receptions and efficiency, got like unbelievable. But the thing is, I like Alvin Kamara. It's hard to like both these players because you legitimately need almost exactly 50 DraftKings points out of the two to get 3x. And like kind of 3x is a good benchmark to get on your roster for tournaments. Even on the smaller slate, that's still what I'm shooting for. So I'll just, in terms of, it's going to be difficult for Michael Thomas to get 30. Not that he can't get it. He gets 30 a lot. I feel more confident in Alvin Kamara getting like 22 than I do Michael Thomas getting 30. So that's really how I'm going to split it. And I also think ownership on Michael Thomas is going to be higher than it is on Alvin Kamara. So in tournaments, I'm going to go pick one of the two. For me, Alvin Kamara. But if you wanted to go Michael Thomas, I would just say my recommendation is to not play both, because the team legitimately has to score probably 5 to 6 touchdowns. Not that can happen, but that means they smash their implied team total by a lot. So I would much rather pick one. I'm going Alvin Kamara. So for that reason, if I'm paying up, DeAndre Hopkins is my guy. And I think you're going to get very low ownership because of the cornerback matchup. And when I say low ownership, I'm thinking, less than 25%, because on these small slates, that's considered low ownership. So I think because of the cornerback matchup, if I'm paying up, you're going to get low ownership on Hopkins. That's the place I'm going to go. Outside of that, I think John Brown is probably going to be overlooked on this slate. I think I would be hard pressed to find anybody who would tell you he is the number one player in terms of air yards in the playoffs right now. He is out air yardsing Michael Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins and everybody else on the playoff slate, or at least on this slate. So I don't get how you can't go back to that with especially Josh Allen's skill set. That's perfect. And the Texans, I believe, are 28th or 29th in passing yards allowed at around 260 or 270. So yeah, this is a perfect spot for John Brown. Beyond that, 2 more kind of very low-owned tournament spots. And I guess if you're playing Kirk Cousins, like I said earlier, double stack 2 of, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and even Dalvin Cook, honestly, because Dalvin Cook has a pretty solid receiving role and he can make a lot out of any single target he gets. So I'd be double stacking there, especially because of Kirk Cousins' lack of rushing production. So 2 low-owned spots. If we end up, Malik Turner, as of it is now Thursday, has not practiced yet. They're without Josh Gordon. They're without Malik Turner. They're without Jerron Brown. David Moore, every single snap at wide receiver 3, I would imagine, will be like a cash game viable player, and I will be massively overweight on tournaments just because I think he's going to go pretty under-owned relative to the wide receiver 3 for Russell Wilson. So I think he's probably one of the better plays all-around cash tournaments if we end up getting a Malik Turner ruled out. And then my final one, kind of if you think the New England Tennessee game is going to have a lot of fantasy points, which it absolutely could, Mohamed Sanu, he's played all but 23 snaps in the past 3 games. He's averaging 6 targets, and they're pretty high percentage targets from Tom Brady coming like low ADOT. So I think he's probably at 3,900, one of the better value plays that's going to be under-owned. So cheap for me, Mohamed Sanu, David Moore. Expensive for me, I would pivot from Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins. And, of course, anytime you get a small slate, all of that John Brown.
I'm with you on the John Brown. Texans have given up the most touchdown passes of any of the teams in the playoffs this year at 33. And John Brown, very fast. So, Kyle, dive into the tight end pool. It's shallow. Be careful.
So
sure, it is shallow.
Assuming Zach Ertz doesn't play, which, if he plays,
it'll be a major upset to me.
Yeah, I know. Plays. Like, what you have to do to your body, you're I think lacerated kidney was the report. What do you have to do to your body to get into a shape to play? I can't imagine. So, like you said,
I would like to see him not die.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, for his health, for the better of the sport, sit out one game, and if it means you sit out till next season, please, Zach Ertz, don't play. I don't think he's going to play either. It just doesn't seem like that would make really any sense. Dallas Goedert at 5,200 on DK is a great cash play, but I think in tournaments for 300 less, pivots to Jared Cook, the team with the highest implied team total by a pretty wide margin, in a game that I actually think is just rife with stacking opportunities. And if you're going one of Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, like I said, I don't think it's viable to pay up for both. But at 4,900, it's much more viable to bank on basically a touchdown and 50 to 60 yards from Jared Cook. So I would like to double stack their opponents with a Jared Cook, Alvin Kamara stack if I'm playing Kirk Cousins stacks. And outside of that, I think we saw the blueprint for the Dallas Goedert cash game chalk last week. Just play Joshua Perkins. He's going to be like half the ownership, and he's going to play 3/4 of the snaps and get 3/4 of the targets. And, of course, Dallas Goedert's going to have a better projection, but, there's a lot of variance that goes in that projection, and you get so much leverage by saving more and going to a player who realistically could outscore him, like happened last week. I just don't know how, as a tournament player, you could not go Joshua Perkins over Dallas Goedert, assuming Zach Ertz doesn't play.
Yeah, he sees a little time at wide receiver as well, so, and they're hurting in that position. Justin, right. Who do you like at the tight end?
Yeah, the Eagles have been successful, right? Running these 2 tight end sets. I mean, that's what's gotten it done. By the way, they both finished as tight end ones this season, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, which shows you how mediocre the C is when you have 2 tight ends from the same team. But that would make sense that Perkins play, permitting Zach Ertz doesn't play. It doesn't sound good right now. I'm not going to stray too far, if at all, from what Kyle said. I mean, you got to go ahead and plug in Dallas Goedert. Definitely 100%, 5,200 right there. And if you're going to get cute, why not play Jared Cook? 9 touchdowns this season, been fantastic at home. I'm right there for sure. And I think he's going to get overlooked in tournaments. His ownership will definitely be down. Jonnu Smith has burned us recently. Yeah. I've written him up. I was optimistic that he would kind of slide in for our boy Delaney Walker. Has not showed any continuity in Tennessee, but Mike Gesicki had a decent week last week against the Patriots, so wouldn't surprise me at all if Mike Vrabel got Smith involved. He is a freak. That's where I'm at. I'm at Dallas Goedert, Jared Cook. I suppose you could talk me into some Joshua Perkins, permitting Zach Ertz doesn't play him. Jacob Hollister might go under the radar. Seahawks team traveling across the country. They don't have a ton of weaponry, as Kyle stated. Tyler Lockett, outside of Tyler Lockett in that running game, that's also decimated. I mean, when you look at that team on paper, you're like, where are the points? Where are the yards going to come from at this point in time? And it's bleak. So Hollister could be sneaky as well.
Yeah, Hollister, I think 30-plus targets over the last 6 games. So he is at least getting some action and cheaper than any other Seahawk worth playing in this one as well. So there's that, Justin. The defense, it's a narrow band. Which one do you like?
It breaks my heart to say this, but I think Mike Vrabel is going to bring the Tennessee Titans into Gillette Stadium. Again, this is based on cost. Sometimes I pay down, sometimes I'll pay way up. I think this is a spot where we could kind of pay down. Mike Vrabel, defensive-minded head coach, obviously has experience under Bill Belichick for many years. I think that's going to factor into the game big time. And this Titans team, they're well disciplined, and they make some bangs and splashes. 4 touchdowns this season. The splits have been pretty much equal at home and on the road. I think this is a team that could show up and exploit the awful New England Patriots offensive line this week. And it has been every bit awful, and where communication between Tom Brady and these younger wide receivers has been terrible. It doesn't take much to create a turnover there with poor communication. So I can definitely see the Titans and throw the rain into the equation. The ball could be bouncing around everywhere. So 2,400, I think that the Titans are firmly in play on the road at New England. It's not a Patriots offense that we've seen the last 5, 10, 15 years by any stretch. Probably one of the worst offenses we've seen. So it's a good spot for the Titans.
Titans, Kyle, or somebody else, the apple of your eye?
Yeah, I don't hate the Titans. In terms of cash, I'd probably just look to Houston on DK. They're only 2,600. They get Josh Allen at home. Houston also gets J.J. Watt back, and they've said that they plan on giving him a large complement of snaps, like a full slate of like Justin said, that's just awesome. The fact that we get J.J. Watt back in the playoffs after not seeing him all season is a blessing for football fans. But also they get Josh Allen, who's like top 10 in sack percentage. He takes a decent amount of sacks, and he's turned the ball over less this year, but the history of him as a quarterback still turns the ball over a lot. So at 2,600, Houston at home favorites versus Buffalo with J.J. Watt. Like that's probably the easiest cash play of the entire slate. Outside of that, I think if we see a decent amount of ownership, which is what I'm thinking we'll get right now because of how hot the Titans have been, New England defense, and then stack them, even maybe a contrarian receiver New England defense stack, I'd be looking to. I think they're probably the best bet to score the most points. And Ryan Tannehill right now, I believe, is second in the league over a 9% sack percent rate. He's a guy who, although he's been efficient as a passer, he's still, guys get to him in the backfield a lot. So I think the New England defense, which has been top 10 in terms of sacks in the league, I think it's 2.9 per game. This is a game where they could really get to Ryan Tannehill. And as far as narratives go, give Bill Belichick a week to prepare for a backup quarterback, which is what Ryan Tannehill, that's what the stats would tell you he was in Miami, and that's literally what he was in Tennessee. I'm not one to buy into narratives, but give Bill Belichick a week to face that, and I like New England defense chance against Ryan Tannehill.
He knows him too. He knows him too from his experience in Miami. And Bill's faced Ryan Tannehill. He's going to be all over him.
Yeah, I think it's fair to point out that and I thought Maurice Jones-Drew had made some good points on NFL Network this week about Vrabel as well, not being the kind of guy who's going to go in, looking to kiss the ring and get the approval of his former boss, going in to kick his ass. So expect an aggressive approach from him in that one as well. So very exciting. I think it's a great weekend for football. I'm looking forward to watching all these games. I will be riveted when the Patriots Titans come on. I mean, look, for whatever you think of the Patriots, this is such a sustained run of success, and there's reason to wonder if we're seeing, the end of the Brady era. And I, at the same time, I think that, realize that every time anyone thinks that, they come back and make us all look stupid.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it makes for exciting football. I think the Saints right now are playing at a super high level, even though I totally agree with Kyle as well. I mean, when they get it home, and the San Francisco 49ers are, the most recent high-end demonstration. They give up a ton of points, and they score a ton of points. Very fantasy-friendly. So very excited for this slate. Looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Looking forward to having my tournament lottery ticket in my hand as I watch. Nothing more joyous than that. So let's wrap it up, fellas.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one thing you touched on at the beginning of that was that I think largely the entire slate, or at least the biggest crux of the slate, comes down to how you view the New England team. Are they a team that is going to, as an offense, be able to rebound, or are they a team that's going to rely on the defense, and if that case, just fade the game entirely? Or are the Titans going to be able to overcome that defense? There are so many moving parts in terms of New England is just not the same New England, but maybe they are again. So I think that is kind of the entire crux of the slate, especially with me personally. I feel pretty confident about my Vikings facing the Saints stacks. So given that I feel like I have a lot of the other moving pieces figured out, New England versus Tennessee is anybody's game. I really don't have a strong lead on that. And I think that's where the biggest edge will be, is taking a hard stance on that. So, with that, I think we have talked about it to death. So for myself, at Kyle Tweets here, for Justin at Justin Lonero, and for Bob at Football Die Hard, everybody enjoy the wild card slate. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in.